All right, Scott Burnstein from Original Gangster Podcast. Thank you, Scott, for coming on, man. I appreciate it. Serious and silliness outcasts.
Thank you for having me, buddy.
No problem. First of all, I got to tell you, I'm a huge fan. Love the podcast because number one, uh, the details of which you get, what's going on right now, present day, is really impressive. And two, your stuff is right to the point. I think that it's just no bullshit. Like whatever the title says, that's what we're talking about it, and you just jump right in, which is what I like. I'm not the kind of guy that wants to beat around the bush much. So it's a fantastic podcast.
Thank you.
Anybody who loves mafia, bikers, true crime, original gangster podcast, definitely.
I
Anyway,
surprised myself with some of the ability to get information. I mean, I don't think I'd be able to. I shouldn't say I don't think. I know I would not have been able to do this 10 years ago, or the new technology age with social media and um, but it shocks me that people from all around North America on a almost hourly basis are feeding me information. Uh,
that was going to be my question. How do
yeah.
you get such great information?
You just cultivate sources, and one leads to another, which leads to another, which leads to another. And it's the same with law enforcement. You meet one guy who vouches for you for another guy who vouches for you with another guy. um and then it's like you feed the beast.
Right, right. That's
uh
yeah.
and so, but now it's at a point where I gotta sift through stuff. Sometimes people are sending me bullshit,
Oh God.
or
Oh
sending
man.
me uh and I think this is probably par for the course in any media outlet, but probably more so maybe when you're talking about true crime and law and order. But people trying to shape narratives,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so it's like someone came to me with something the other day. I might end up reporting it, but I'm just like, what's the angle here? Like, why are they coming to me with this? And this is like something that I don't want to get into the details of what it is, but it's something that is relevant and people would be interested in it. But it's something from like 10 years ago.
I got
And,
you.
I'm just like, why are you coming to me with this now? Like, you always got to like ask yourself, like, what's the angle that someone's coming
Right, right, right,
bringing?
right. What's funny is I have two podcasts. This one is more of an interview show. The other one is just on bodybuilding. And I cover everything bodybuilding. And I get that. Like there's a lot of gossip and drama that goes on
Yeah.
behind the scenes. And people email me and message me, oh, did you know this and did you know that? And I gotta go look through it and whatnot. But how did you start original gangsters? What made you start the podcast?
Well, honestly, I'm always a little bit behind the curve when it comes to technology.
Yeah, join the club.
Uh, so, I've been in the reporting space since 2007. My first book came out. I wrote six books between
Wow.
2007 and 2000, and let's say within between 2007 and 2017, I wrote six books that got
Wow.
published.
Impressive.
Um, and I was working for a newspaper, and the newspaper got bought, and a lot of my crime reporting at my newspaper in Detroit got chopped, and I
Wow.
I wasn't being allowed to do that anymore. So
Right.
I needed an outlet to report. Um, People had been telling me for a couple years at that point to jump into the podcast
Yeah.
game. Um, and then I got an offer from, at the time it was CBS Radio.
Really?
Now it's Odyssey. Maybe Odyssey got bought. Now it's something else. It might be like two or three
Right.
iterations past it. But
Right.
the CBS Radio people asked me to put together a podcast for the local Detroit CBS Radio. Um, and the idea was for it to be national, so CBS Radio could like if it was focusing on something in New York, then CBS Radio in New York would promote it. If it was focusing on something in Chicago, CBS
I
Radio.
see. Oh,
Um, So we launched it in, I think we started recording episodes in the end of 18, and then it launched in like January of 2019.
Hmm.
And it was just audio for sorry, it was just audio for for
A
for,
podcast.
it was just an audio podcast from 2019 to 2020, the end of 22. So
Right,
for
right.
just like three years we were just audio. We had we built a big audience audio, and then again, just like I'm a little bit behind. Then by
Yeah.
2022 we got onto YouTube and have been building. At the end of 22, it really was 23 when we really started. So it's only been about 2 years as a multimedia.
Really? Well, that is fantastic because your following on YouTube is pretty damn good for only being on there
Yeah,
for
that's what I people were telling me back in 2015 and 16 to jump on YouTube, and it took me like another 6 7 years. But
That's all right. Listen,
yeah,
it doesn't matter. It really does. At the end of the day, I'm sure you get this, right? I'm sure you get somebody who has no experience, no formal training in true crime. They go, you know who you should talk about? You know who that really should I?
yeah,
Should
right,
I?
yeah.
Shut the fuck up. Yes, I get that all the time.
Well, everybody's got everybody, and I'm not knocking people for it because this is kind of human nature. But everybody in their mind has $1 million story,
Yeah, yeah.
and
It's just
99% of them they're not $1 million stories,
yeah.
but they bring it to you as like this is the story that ends all stories,
Yeah.
and
And it's amazing because it happens to me on both channels. It's amazing because they literally um talk to you like they know what they're talking about. They've never been on a podcast. They don't even know how to put YouTube on their phone. And
yeah,
they're telling me what I should do. You know who you gotta have on? The best is when like I'm a small podcast. So I'm grateful when people like you come on. The best is when they just pull somebody out of their ass. You know who you need to have on? Oh, you got to get John Bernthal on. He'd be a good interview. Really,
oh
the
right,
actor.
I know,
Yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah. I'll just call him up. Yeah,
call them
it's
up,
just no
yeah,
problem. Unfucking believable.
yeah,
Anyway, is that where you're from, Detroit?
yeah. From Detroit, born and raised, lived in Indiana and Chicago, and then came back to Detroit.
Oh, okay. Well, so now let's get into some fun stuff. Just I don't know if you want. I did one video on my background. Um, uh, born and bred in Brooklyn. Then had lived in Staten Island, and now I'm in New Jersey. My father was involved with several members of the Colombo crime family during that time in the
Mhm.
70s, 80s. And then
How
because he
can
was,
you be from Brooklyn and not be involved with the
yeah, well, he was
Columbus?
also a contractor. So it was
Yeah,
like almost impossible, right? If he was, in construction, and it's like back then you needed to have a
yeah,
friend. And that's basically what happened. But he got, kind of sidetracked. And his partner was Scappy, Anthony Scarpati. I'm
yeah,
sure you've heard.
yeah,
Yeah. And then Greg Scarpa reported to him. I had Larry Maz on. That was part of that crew. I think I sent you that video. I sat
yeah,
him on several times. And then when we moved to Staten Island, that whole crew went away. And then it was, if he needed any help, it was TG, Anthony Graziano.
yeah, yeah,
He was out in Staten Island. So, I mean, there's more to the story, but we won't get into it. So, I'd like to talk about some of the stuff that's happening now.
yeah,
A few weeks ago, there was a big bust in Jersey. And
yeah.
it's like literally like 10 minutes from where I live. And there was the Lucchese crime family or a satellite crew of the
Yes,
Lucchese
and
crime.
The Jersey crew of the Lucchese crime family, and there were 40 guys that were
Yeah. Yeah.
indicted.
Yeah. And it was Georgie Neck Sapola,
Jordan
Big Joe
Nicopola.
Perna. Um, none of Is there anything left of the actual New Jersey mafia? I mean,
Yeah, the DeCavalcante crime family
right.
is still
Because
around.
they didn't seem to be involved. They didn't seem to get arrested. I don't hear anything from them. I think the names are Charles Majuri,
Yeah,
Joseph Jacoby, Giuseppe
yeah,
Ciafletti.
they're really
Um,
they're really quiet, but they exist, and they're pretty. I mean, for the 2020s, they're pretty number strong. I mean, I think they probably have over 30, 40 guys that are
really?
got buttons in New Jersey. But yeah, they haven't. There hasn't been a lot of busts in the last. 10 years ago there was a big bust, but since then. There hasn't been a lot of them, and yeah, they weren't caught up in this. Every crime family in New York has a New Jersey branch,
Right, right.
and then you have the Philadelphia group that operates in New Jersey. So you got like 7 different groups that are operating in that state, and it's not that big of a state. So,
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Because
uh,
when we hear anytime we hear of anything out here where I am, I never hear about the Della Cavante family. I always hear about uh Joey Perna,
yeah,
Zapola, right?
they're the
There's
most the Lucchese's in Jersey are the most prominent of the
yeah.
5 families in Jersey.
Now, did they move from Brooklyn to New Jersey, or is it just
It's a separate crew. Georgie Neck, who is the heir apparent, he's been hand selected by Vicamuso, the longtime Godfather, who's 90 years old. He's in
yeah,
prison.
he's living forever, that guy. It's
He's going to
unbelievable.
die in prison.
Yeah.
He's been in there since 91, 92, I think.
Wow.
Um, he's chosen Georgie Neck to be the next boss. So Georgie Neck has been phasing in over the last couple years uh, to day acting boss, street boss duty. So this was a boss that took down the Jersey crew, but by taking down the Jersey crew, you also took down the guy that's running the whole show. He's a Jersey. This kind of gets into part of your question. I mean,
That's fine.
he's a Jersey guy. He was born in Jersey. His dad was a Jersey wise guy who got killed, um, I think in 81 or 82. His name was Georgie Rush. George Zapola's senior was Georgie Rush, and his son was Georgie Neck.
Okay.
Georgie Rush got killed. Um, at some point, even though Georgie Neck was a New Jersey guy, he went to Brooklyn and worked for the Brooklyn guys, which was Vicamuso and Gas Pipe Casso.
Wow.
Uh,
Okay.
but I think that he's kept residence in New Jersey, and he's living in Red Bank now.
Okay. Yeah. That's what I've
Um,
heard as well.
and he came out of prison. He did like 20 years. He came out of prison, and at some point was assigned to the Jersey wing of the Lucchese's, and he was running the Jersey faction. And then when Amuso tapped him as the next boss, he went back to Brooklyn and started running the family, uh, the whole family. But since he's based in Red Bank, he was doing a lot of that administrating from Jersey,
Mhm.
and had empowered Big Joe Perna as his skipper for the Lucchese's Jersey branch, and that's how he got caught in this bust.
I see. Okay. Okay. Before we get into what they were arrested for, I was under the understanding that in the late '90s, early 2000s, in the New Jersey mafia, that there was an informant for a very long time. I think it was 10 years, and he brought down a lot of the crew. Is that accurate?
Who are you referring to?
Oh God, I wrote it down last night, and I just completely
Joey
forgot.
O, I think isn't it? One guy got killed.
Yeah, I know that one. That well, let's see.
I think they called him Joey O.
It's a good thing that I could edit all this out. That's the best part about not being on live. There was I don't remember. I know there was Vincent Palermo.
Yeah, but Palermo didn't. Palermo was the boss that flipped after he got convicted. He wasn't cooperating on the street.
Okay, and all right, so I might be mistaken then.
There was
Or
a guy named Joey O. I forgot what his real name was. And Joey O was a driver, gopher for Vinny Ocean, Palermo, and some other guys. And Joey O was wearing a wire on everybody, and then they killed him. That might be who you're.
probably I should have been a little bit more
I think
detailed.
his name was I. Excuse me if I'm wrong, but I think his name was Ralph Masella or Maselli.
I
They called
okay.
him Joey O. I don't know exactly how that nickname
I
came
think
about.
that's yeah, I think that's accurate. Okay. Yeah, and it brought down a lot of the crew. From what I understand, almost to the point of where there was nothing left, if that's accurate.
I mean, he took a chunk out of it. You
Yeah.
know, a lot of major players went away. Some guys flipped. It definitely hurt the crime family, but I don't think it went away.
Okay. All right. So the interviews I've done interviews with Larry Mazza. I've done interviews with Hootie Russo. I've done interviews with Anthony Arliata, um, Rita Gigante,
I've
Anthony,
interviewed most of these people as well. We've
Anthony
covered kind of the
Ruggiano
same
Jr.,
territory.
John Elite, and they basically said after a certain time, it was like I'd say around 2010 ish, that there was a no kill law,
Yeah.
and they try to stay away from violence as much as possible. And as a
Yep.
matter of fact, um, it wasn't even just no kill; it was no drugs, no more pinky rings, no more tracksuits, nothing that could attract attention. Right?
Instead of like beating a guy up for a debt, they just cut him off.
Okay.
You can't bet with us anymore.
Right.
Don't come around here anymore.
Right. How does that keep I would assume that has to limit the type of crimes that you could be involved in.
Well, I don't think. First of all, I don't think it's necessarily like. It's definitely a vibe and and a loose order. Um, that's not to say people don't get roughed up. That's not to
Right.
say people don't get killed. I mean, there have been murders in the last 15 years. There's not anywhere near the level of uh, the size, you know, the number of murders in terms of size was quite truncated.
Okay.
Um, well, it's benefited these guys. And if I'm gonna be, you know, honest with my analysis,
Yeah.
it's taken a lot of the law enforcement scrutiny off them because
Yeah.
they're deemed less of a priority by law enforcement. So in a lot of ways, it's allowed them to refuel.
Adapt
Uh,
or die.
right. Well, and they just right exactly. They evolved. So I tell people all the time, I'm like, the mob isn't dead. It's just evolved. It's different.
Yeah.
They don't kill people anymore. Really.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, for the most part.
Right.
You- I wouldn't test the theory. Like I wouldn't be like, well, they never kill me. I can act a certain, no, but because there have been hits in the last 15 years. They're just way fewer and far between than they
Right.
had in the past. But like you look over in Boston, they disbanded the FBI squad after 50, 60 years a couple months ago. And it's not that they're disbanding them because they don't exist anymore. They acknowledged in the press release when they said that they were disbanding the FBI squad, they're like, they still have 30 made members. And I think it's probably closer to 40 or 50, but
Hmm.
the FBI acknowledged there's still 30 made guys in Boston.
Mm.
We just don't consider them a priority anymore because of the lack of violence.
Right.
And we're reallocating those resources to other parts of the bureau. And as a result, I'm sure I did a podcast on this last week. I'm sure that the Denunzios and Bobby Carosa and Spucky Spagnolo and Matty Guglielmetti, the guys that are the top shot callers in the patriarchal crime family, I'm sure that night they probably that very night that announcement came out, they probably did a toast and
Yeah.
toasted to Uncle Sam. Thank
Yeah.
you
That's probably
for.
the yeah, probably the best
But
night's
you're not.
sleep they ever had.
I'm not going to be followed around anymore for no reason. So they still exist. They're just more of a nonviolent enterprise.
Yeah. And what kind? It seems like the majority of the crime seems to be bookmaking, poker games,
Yeah,
loan sharking.
the traditional stuff. But I think within the evolution over the last quarter century, there's been a lot of diversification into white collar stuff,
Really?
into spaces that hadn't been explored before by most mob families,
Mm.
and they're cultivating new rackets in non traditional spaces.
I see.
Uh,
'Cause they tried that once before with the stock market years ago in the late 90s, and then
yeah,
that
they're still. I mean, they're still manipulating
this
stock market stuff, but
really
I would say one of the big things now,
okay.
nationwide over the last decade, uh, is legal marijuana, um, where the thinking consensus of legislators is that by legalizing, which is happening around the country, I mean, I think it's like 40 of the 50 states are legal now to some
Right.
degree.
Mm.
Um, and I would guess that in the next decade, it'll be federally legal. And but within the legalization, there becomes new black markets and new ways to racketeer.
Okay.
One of the ways I know, which is pretty basic, which is the state awards licenses, and you might have a license to legally grow 20 plants or something,
Hmm.
and a racketeer or a mobster will come to that person that has uh, a legal get out of jail free card to grow marijuana, and the gangster will say, you have 20 legal plants. I'm taking 10 of them.
Yeah, it sounds like a show that Sylvester Stallone would do.
Yeah, right. Tulsa King.
Yeah, exactly. That's unbelievable. Is there still a commission? Do they still operate nationwide?
There's no like formal commission anymore, and there really hasn't been probably for 30 years, I
Yeah, a
would
very
guess.
long time.
I
Okay.
think there might have been a like a makeshift commission meeting maybe in the early 2000s, late 90s, but it really hasn't been the way that it functioned from the 30s to the, let's say, the 80s, where it was an actual like board of directors,
Okay.
um, that really had oversight and really made policy and regulated policy. That's been gone since the 90s, I would say. But uh, there is coordination between the families. I mean, if somebody's coming into your state and they're checking in with you,
I
there are
see.
a lot of. I would say another thing, another offshoot of the evolution is that I think there's actually been an upswing in families doing business with each other,
Really?
and a lot of it being white collar stuff.
Wow. That's actually impressive. Okay. Um, Here's another question. Breeding grounds. I mean, the neighborhood that I grew up in,
Yeah,
very,
they're gone or they're
yeah.
about to be gone.
So where would they recruit? Because like, when I was growing up, they had yeah in Brooklyn you had the 20th Avenue Boys, you had the Bath Avenue Boys. Of course, that story that was made famous is the Bath Avenue Boys that killed the girl from Staten Island, that woman from
Yeah,
Staten Island. I forget.
Shemtoff.
Right. They were part of the Bonanno crew, and you had the Purple Gang in East Harlem. Or where would they recruit from now? Because it doesn't. I don't. You don't see like Italian neighborhoods anymore. I mean, if you do, it's this small. I know there's one in Philadelphia and Boston and whatnot. But
Yeah, they're a lot smaller, and a lot of it is just family. You know, the breeding ground are guys that are already in the life, and their sons and daughters and nephews, and not daughters, sorry,
yeah,
sons and nephews and grandchildren and friends of sons and daughters and
yeah,
grandchildren.
yeah,
Um, yeah, all the neighborhoods are going away, or they're going, this, things are popping up in the suburbs, but they definitely don't have the little neighborhoods
right,
uh, that they had before, like you said, as recruiting territory. So it's the families are shrinking, and they've been
yeah,
shrinking. They've been shrinking for decades now. Groups that had 75, 100 guys have 30, 40 guys. Groups that had 500 guys have 200 guys.
hmm
Groups that used to have 30 or 40 guys have 10 guys.
oh,
So
yeah. It used to be a thing that you kind of aspired to be. Everybody wanted to be a gangster growing up, and even like when I was in my late teens, early 20s, and I would go out to the clubs and bars, it was still those guys would still roll up in their Mercedes and they didn't have to wait online and the same thing. But it's and everybody kind of was like, oh, impressed. But now it just seems to
I think in New York there's still some cachet to it in certain parts of New York.
yeah,
But I mean, I can just speak from Detroit. It's all in the suburbs. There's
yeah,
nothing going on in the city,
yeah.
and it's very disparate. It's like pocketed.
I see.
These guys are in one part of the city, and these other guys are in this other part of the city, and they might be part of the same organization, but they're not really interacting or doing business. They're kind of like operating their little fiefdoms under the same umbrella. There's not as much connectivity.
Okay. So one more question about the Italian American mafia, and then I want to change
Yeah.
direction. But what makes the Genovese family operate so well?
Why are they at the top of
Why are
the
they?
team?
And they always kind of have been,
Yeah,
really. I mean, since the chin.
before the
What?
chin, I'd say. Yeah.
Yeah, really. What makes them operate so savvy, under the radar, so powerful, so members all seem to be more loyal?
Yeah, I would say discipline. There's a discipline in the ranks there where they're committed. Discipline and commitment, which might be the same thing.
Yeah.
To be disciplined, you have to be committed to being disciplined. Where there's going to be always an extra layer of insulation, maybe two or three extra layers of insulation. Um, there's going to be a protocol that you have to abide by, or there will be consequences. There is I think, a pride factor
Mm.
in doing things a certain way. Um, they're just very buttoned up and very stealth. I know that I'll be blowing the whistle on this, but I don't. I know. I know that the way they do some of their meetings, in terms of like how they communicate with each other,
Mhm.
um, a lot of times it's in the middle of the night and it's like on the top of skyscrapers.
Really?
It's like real. Like you have to be really committed to doing things a certain way, where you're only going to talk, like at like 4 o'clock in the morning, and on the roof of a random building in uh, in, in Manhattan or
Yeah, Greenwich Village,
in the
whatever.
Bronx
Yeah,
or
right.
something. Um, and so it's just like stuff like that where they're they're holding themselves to a much higher standard, and I think there might not be the murders anymore, but I think within the Genovese crime family, you have enough guys at the top of the heap that are killers, that people know are killers,
Mhm.
um, and that knowledge keeps people in line.
Ah, I see. Okay.
And I think it's the same in some other crime families, in the Bonannos, um, and the Colombos.
In being from New York, the understanding is that the Bonannos and the Colombos are really unorganized, and
Yeah,
they're
I would say they're the bottom two
yeah,
in the top. The five: Genovese, Gambino, Lucchese, and then Colombo, Bonanno. But I would say that the Bonannos in the last year or two have uh, have gained stature,
oh really?
and there's a lot of praise within the five families orbit that Mikey Mancuso, who's their boss and has been their boss for 20 years now,
Hmm.
uh, took the title when he was in prison and came out in 2018. And he's known as a wild card, a guy that came from the Purple Gang, the East Harlem Purple Gang, and been convicted of two murders, including murdering his wife.
That's
He is,
unbelievable.
yeah, he's known as a dangerous guy who, um, not that recently, was the catalyst behind a lot of uncertainty and volatility in the crime family. Like as of 3 years ago, 22,
Right.
where there were hit teams from the Bronx going into Long Island looking to kill people, and it was really chaotic. In the last year or two, it's calmed down, and he's gotten that family back in order. And he did the advice from Barney Bellomo of the Genovese and Lorenzo and Dom Sheffield of the Gambinos, who have been counseling him and kind of told
That's
him
good.
to clean up your act, because
Right.
volatility is hurts us all, and kind of erases some of the we've gone away factor because of the lack of murders and letting people kind of think they're not there anymore, but in reality they can make money and all this other stuff.
Right.
And by Mancuso actively trying to eliminate a certain group within his family, which was the Brooklyn group. It was in the Bonannos, it was the Bronx versus Brooklyn.
Hmm.
And it got bad. And there was, I'm not sure if your audience knows or if you know, there was a funeral home uh, brawl in the
Yeah.
summer of 22 in Glen Cove, where a really vicious brawl broke out at uh, at a funeral of a former Bonanno capo.
Yeah.
And but
It
the
was
last
really. It was really. I'm not coming from the podcast, but coming from hearing things where I live. It was a really black eye on the Bonannos. They kind of got
it looked
laughed at. It,
yeah,
it was
well,
it
right,
was
and it was the Barneys and the Lorenzos of the world that told Mancuso, unless you change your tune, this you're going to lose the grip on this thing real quick.
yeah.
And he's taken uh he's heeded that advice, and he's taken on a lot of measures that have gotten that family all back on the same page, and he's welcomed a lot of those Brooklyn guys back into the fold and buried the hatchet. A lot of people didn't think that Mikey could do that
Mm.
because of his reputation of being so such a serious individual, as someone who wouldn't forget slights.
Yeah.
And the Brooklyn guys, for people that don't know, the Brooklyn guys tried to unseat Mancuso while he was in prison in the last couple of years of his prison sentence. The Brooklyn guys tried to vote Mancuso out of the boss's seat, and they actually did vote him out, but
Really.
the vote was blocked, um, and it never actually happened. And then those were the guys that fight involved in the summer of 22. It was the Brooklyn guys that were going to Vito Grimaldi's funeral, and Mancuso told the Brooklyn guys they couldn't go to the funeral, that they were banned from the
It was the
funeral.
guy's father-in-law or something like that.
Yeah, so the leader of that Brooklyn group, Joe Camerano Jr., Joe C., that was his father-in-law.
Yeah.
So he basically said, "You're not going to tell me I can't go to my father-in-law's
Yeah. Right. And
wake."
he brought a crew of biker guys with
Brought a
him.
bunch of bikers with him, which the Cameranos have always controlled the bikers in Brooklyn. The guys that the Bonannos deal with through the bikers have always, those relationships have always been managed by the Cameranos back to Joe C's dad.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, they were. I don't think that the Mancuso guys knew that the biker guys were there, because they were in the parking lot, like waiting for something to pop off.
Right. 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 Right.
And so the Mancuso guys, who were all prominent guys, these weren't low level guys. The three guys that Mancuso sent were all uh, either capo or above. And I don't think these guys knew when they started fighting with the Cameranos that within a couple seconds, 20 bikers from the parking lot were going to filter in.
Yeah, they pretty much got embarrassed and they got
Yeah.
their ass kicked. And I don't think there was any kind of, uh, I don't think there was any kind of retribution. So
Well,
I
they're,
remember,
well, that's what was happening though, was that in the months that followed, Mancuso was trying to kill the Cameranos, and there was shootings in Long Island and fire bombings in Long Island.
okay,
It got covered in the local newspapers, but not contextually. They
right,
would report on the shootings or the fire bombings, but they wouldn't say that, oh, this is related to
I see.
this or
Okay.
that.
Okay. Okay.
So there was about a year there where he was trying to kill those guys, and
Wow. Okay.
that's when he got word from the other bosses that he needed to pull it back, and then he has, and the family is stabilized, and he brought on Bruno Indelicato as consigliere. Bruno is been around forever. He was
Mm.
depicted in the movie Donnie Brasco.
Wow.
Um,
Okay.
his dad was Sonny Red,
Mm.
and Bruno has been the guy that I'm told has built the bridge between Brooklyn and Mancuso to bring a lot of guys back and get
Right.
everyone copacetic again.
Do you think Teddy Persico will bring anything to the Colombo crime family? I don't even know if he's out yet.
He's coming out in a couple months. What do you mean? What do you mean? I mean, he's
Bring some order back to the Colombo crime family.
uh, yeah. I mean, this is a job that he's been waiting for his whole life. Uh, done a lot of prison time. I mean, a lot of prison time. I mean, I think over the last 30 years, he's been locked up 27 of those years, or something like that. Uh, yeah, I would say that Little Rob, the placeholder,
Mm-hmm.
Little Rob
D'Onofrio.
D'Onofrio has stabilized things,
Okay.
um, and I think he's done from what I've heard, has done a really good job. I don't think it was necessarily unstable when Mush Russo, when that bus came down and all the old timers
Yeah.
went. I don't know if I would say it was unstable, but there was definitely a factor there where Andy Mush Russo was not all there mentally.
Mm,
He was losing his mind to dementia.
yeah.
And I know that there were a lot of wiretaps in 2019, 2020, 21, where a lot of the top guys in the Colombos were saying we're kind of losing control of the family because our boss doesn't know what day it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, and it was kind of like a delicate subject because he was the boss. He's a member of the royal family. He's a cousin of the Persicos.
Right.
So I think with him going to prison and then dying quickly thereafter, and then the torch being passed to Little Rob, I'm told that has the Colombo crime family have been real have gotten stronger under Little Rob, and some of the dysfunction that existed before has ceased. He's close with Teddy, and we'll see how Teddy runs things. But I think the big issue, honestly, if we're talking about stuff that's happening in real time right here,
Mm-hmm.
is Vito Guzzo just came out of prison last week. He is a kind of a legendary street figure in Queens. Uh, been locked up since '97. It's the same age as Teddy Persico, and is in the Colombos. And I think if Vito Guzzo stays in the Colombos right now, there could be some issues. But I'm being told that there are transfers
Mm.
in the mix now, and that Vito Guzzo might not be with the Colombos for that much longer. He might get transferred into the Bonannos or the Lucchese's or the Genovese.
Okay.
I think if Teddy Persico came out and Vito Guzzo were out, and they're both about the same age, I think there potentially could be problems, and I think that's why that they're uh, trying to,
Nip it in the bud
yeah, and get
before it
Vito
actually
Guzzo.
happened. Yeah. Well. Okay. Well, that makes sense. It's amazing how they've become so much more diplomatic,
Yeah,
instead of resorting to violence anymore. And
there is an issue though that I've reported on between Little Rob D'Onofrio and some of the Gambinos over Little Rob's son-in-law, who's a Gambino affiliate, really close to the Carozzo, or was really close to the Carozzo brothers.
mhm,
Now Nicky's the only one that's still alive.
right.
And this guy, I guess, allegedly disrespects Little Rob's daughter. It's been
Really?
some domestic violence, drug abuse, and it's been a couple years of sit downs with Little Rob trying to get his son-in-law chased or prevent him from getting a button in the Gambinos. And I think some of the sit downs I've been told have gotten really contentious. So that's an issue, I guess, that
Yeah,
is still
what are you supposed to do in a situation like that? If you're trying to avoid violence and the guy is
beating on your daughter.
yeah, doesn't look good on you,
Oh,
as
well, and that's where some of you know the no violence edicts go out the window because this guy has taken some vicious beatings
oh, he has.
because of Little Rob ordering them.
Oh, good. Okay.
But he's still around. I think Little Rob's and I'm putting myself in Little Rob's mind. I don't know this for sure, but I've talked to people. I think Little Rob wants the guy shelved.
Right.
Like the brother-in-law, and the brother-in-law's got lineage. Um, he's a Scotto. His I don't know if it was his dad or his uncle was Anthony Scotto, who was a capo in the Gambinos.
Wow.
And this guy has a lot of support from really high-ranking guys in the Gambinos.
Really?
And he was like in
Yeah,
prison with some.
moneymaker is that
I don't know. In prison, I think he got close to Nicky Caruso and was kind of like his quasi bodyguard in prison.
okay? I got you.
Um, but it's from what I've heard from Ty, it's uh, it's curious that the Gambinos are so adamant in protecting this guy against a boss from another family where he's actively hurting members of this guy's family. So,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It seems
but I'm told the daughter won't leave him. So the daughter and this guy are like kind of a toxic couple where they're both.
yeah. That's I
I'm
mean that
told
is
they're both very heavily addicted to drugs and
that's typical woman behavior. The
yeah.
guy the guy that treats you like a princess, that's the guy you don't want to be with. And
Yeah.
the guy that knocks the shitty out of you, that's the guy you stick with. Unbelievable.